What's up, guys? This is Chris here, and today we're going to be talking about a fairly controversial subject, and that seems to be the norm on this channel lately, but I figured I would talk about something that's kind of been on my mind for a while. What's been on my mind is bolt-action rifles and if they really need to be a part of my everyday life. And the answer is not really. Now, this is kind of coming off the back of a couple other videos similar to this if you haven't seen them. My 300 blackout video and my Glock video, basically taking a look at things that I've been using for a long time and see if they're really still valid in 2026. I've honestly been using bolt-action rifles for a really long time, like a really long time. Like I had a bolt-action 22 when I was 12 years old, so I'm familiar with the process. I also have owned multiple bolt-action rifles in multiple calibers for many years now. I've hunted with them, I've target shot with them, I've plinked with them, I've done pretty much everything you can really do with the platform aside from trenches in World War I and stuff like that. Bolt guns definitely had their day, don't get me wrong, they are a great platform, and if you're a big fan, by all means don't let this video sway you, but I'm about to tell you why I think I'm probably done with bolt-action rifles. Now, before I get into the negatives, I'll get into a few positives. Number one, bolt-action rifles are extremely affordable. You can find a decent one for the $300 to $500 price point. That'll get you pretty much what you need. If you need a hunting gun from 0 to 500 yards, if you need a gun that's going to be slightly more accurate than your average rack grade semi-auto, or if you just like the feel of running a manually operated action, like a lot of people do, I completely understand your need or love for the bolt-action rifle platform. But with modern day semi-autos, I do feel like some of those advantages are a little less than they would be. Let's start out with the affordability. You can get a Savage Axis for $300. You can get a pretty decent Ruger gun for around $500 to $600, but you can also get a pretty decent AR-15 for about $500 to $600 these days. I mean, you can go get a Palmetto AR-15 that shoots 3 MOA, roughly, and you have the semi-automatic capability, you have the capability to use it for home defense, and in my personal opinion, it's probably money better well spent if you just want a do-it-all rifle. However, if you are hunting, bolt action is still formidable. There's a lot of states where semi-automatics are not allowed, or they have magazine limits that you don't have to worry about with a bolt action rifle because they only hold 5 rounds. On average, they are slightly more accurate, but how much more accurate?
Hit.
That's 400.
Hit.
I'll take that. In my personal experience, for the average person for a hunting application or even for a precision rifle application, 1 to 2 MOA is going to pretty much do everything you'd ever need. Now, there's some reviewers on YouTube that swear by 1 MOA guns, but personally, I've rarely seen a person that can shoot 1 MOA, and that's the honest truth. A lot of those guys are blowhards, and a lot of those guys don't shoot, and that's a reality. If you have a 0.5 MOA gun, there's a pretty good shot that's not what you're shooting unless you're a very, very good shooter. Very similar to like 2-inch at 50-yard handguns and stuff like that. How many people can actually shoot those guns out? Very few. So I do feel like some of the advantages of the bolt-action rifle are not quite as obvious as they once were, being affordability and precision, whereas some of the negatives seem to be more glaring than they used to be, at least for me. And I'm going to be talking about in this video, me personally. I'm not saying they're better for you. I'm not saying you should be done with bolt-action rifles. I'm just saying for my personal use. Let's start with the first one. I don't shoot that far. I usually shoot out to about 500 yards, and most rack grade AR-15s or semi-automatic rifles can easily do that. My Palmetto State rifles can do that. My Radical Firearms, my $300 AR-15 can shoot out to 500 yards and hit a man-sized target. And for the most part, that's the precision I need. When it comes to hunting, I live in Iowa. And in Iowa, we have straight-walled cartridges. So it doesn't make much of a difference whether you use an AR-15 or whether you use a bolt-action rifle, to be completely honest with you, because your average engagement distance is going to be about 100 yards. And for me personally, I prefer repeat shots. Ever since I was about 15, I don't even want to pump. I don't want to run anything. I want to just pull the trigger and reset the trigger and pull again. I don't have to think about anything but the target, what I'm shooting, what's behind it, whether it's a safe shot, whether it's a humane shot. I don't need to concern myself with operating anything. Now, it doesn't mean I don't like manual operated guns. I grew up on lever action rifles, and to be honest with you, I do prefer them. And if I was in a state where I couldn't use a semi-automatic, I would use a lever action because that's also what I grew up hunting on. I feel like the lever action's easier for me to cycle quickly. I feel like it's just more fun for me overall, and I feel like the philosophy of use of the lever action, the sort of brush gun that it is, 0 to 300 yards, really fits my philosophy of use better than a bolt action rifle, which is why I own a lot more levers than I do bolts. Now, if you're into hunting, or maybe you're into hiking, maybe you don't have a shooting range like I have here, but you still want to shoot long range, I would check out OnX Off-Road. OnX Off-Road is an app that you can use to find BLM land, so you can shoot without having to worry about trespassing on somebody else's land, or you can find nice nice public hunting grounds in case you don't have a whole bunch of private land to hunt on. When I was a kid, all we did was hunt on public land, and we just had to kind of know where it is, whereas now you can use this app and you can find it pretty much wherever you are. And if you're not hunting, again, you can find some awesome BLM land that you can go shoot at, but if you do that, make sure to clean up after yourself and make sure to take care of the land. Now, if you don't do either of those things, onX Off-Road also can find hiking trails for you, and you can download offline maps, which is super important, because if you've ever been out in the field and you're trying to navigate and you realize you have no internet and you don't have another option, well, you should have went to the Boy Scouts, or you can get onX Off-Road, because it'll give you offline maps so you can get yourself out of trouble in case you get into it. All right, so I just wanted to show you a couple of options for hunting rifles other than bolt guns, stuff I kind of prefer. First up, this is a Henry 44 Magnum. This is kind of an all-purpose brush gun. If you wanted to hunt pretty much anything, it's a straight well cartridge. You can hunt deer with it here in Iowa. It's a shorter barrel than maybe you would want, but for a brush gun, for nice and tight stuff, like if you're hunting obviously inside a forest, it's very, very nice and more than enough power to take down a deer, and looks pretty sick as well. Another option that I really like is going to be this guy right here. Now, this is a really good hunting rifle. This is kind of a dedicated hunting rifle, whereas this one's sort of more of a looking good sort of thing. This one here is all purpose. It's easy to use. This one's lighter weight than this gun is. It has a longer barrel, and this one's in 45-70. So if you wanted to hunt a buffalo, if you wanted to hunt an elk, if you wanted to hunt a moose or a caribou, you can do all that with this gun. And I actually just prefer the lever controls. I prefer how they feel. And in the state that I live in, there's not usually 700-800 yard shots. So if you're shooting 200 yards and in, 45-70 will smoke pretty much anything on planet Earth. So I actually prefer this gun over something like a bolt gun, mostly because of the style, the feel, the way I like. But for practicality, there's just faster follow-up shots for me without coming off the optic. But if I'm not using this, I almost always go with a semi-auto. I have a bunch of shotguns that I've hunted with in Iowa for slugs and stuff like that. People say slugs aren't accurate. You can shoot at 200 yards with a shotgun slug. But if you're looking for like something like hogs, for example, this guy right here, which we've been shooting today, is probably my choice now. I would say, if you ever see me doing any hog hunting on the channel, this is gonna be it. This is the MR762A4, and a little bit better than a bolt gun. I also feel like a lever action or a semi-automatic like an AR-15, for example, just fills more roles for the average person these days. You can use a lever action rifle in a home defense scenario or in a self-defense scenario, in my opinion, easier and more effective than you can use a bolt gun. In my personal experience, having untrained people out here, that seems to be the truth. They're usually shorter, they're usually easier to manipulate while moving, and they're usually pistol caliber cartridges that are just easier to fire and load in general. And semi-automatics obviously far superior because of, you know, gas operated 30 rounds, all that good stuff. Another issue that I have is it seems like quality control with bolt guns can be way up in the air. Now, you would think that would be the case with semi-automatics because more moving parts or whatever, but the reality is that I've had a lot of shitty bolt guns for the money. Like, I bought $300 and $400 bolt guns that were absolutely unusable, whereas usually AR-15s are at least moderately functional. A lot of times, if you want to get what you really need to get out of a bolt action rifle, you need to go $600-700 and up. In some cases, if you want something super accurate, if you want like 1/3 MOA, 1/4 MOA rifles, you're gonna have to pay $3,000, in which case you can get a half MOA semi-automatic for that price. And for me, that's just honestly why I've never got into the super expensive bolt action game. Maybe this is lack of knowledge on my part because I'm talking about a subject I don't really know as much about as I do semi-automatic rifles, but I've shot some expensive bolt guns, and sometimes when I shoot them, because I only shoot 500 or 1,000 yards and in, I just don't see the reason to own them. Now, lastly, another thing I wanted to mention that is definitely personal bias is going to be my continual shoulder issues. So I used to be a boxer, I used to be a football player, I used to wrestle, and that's kind of where it started. But then I was a tree trimmer, and I've been trimming trees off and on since I was around 14. Started when I was 12, but I started trimming when I was 14. My dad owned a tree service, and I'm a second generation tree trimmer, so I started very young. I also started holding heavy chainsaws above my head very young, and I've had continual problems with my right shoulder, which is a lot of reasons why I don't get quite the draw practices maybe some people get, but really why I don't run a lot of manually operated guns, based on the fact that it doesn't bother me as much to run a lever or a pump shotgun or something like that. Bolt action rifle, because of the way I operate it, seems to really affect my shoulder, which is a lot of times why you guys don't see full lengthy reviews of bolt action rifles on my channel. I know I'm not the only person that has that. I have a couple of buddies that feel that way as well, in which case you can get most of what you need to get out of the long range precision game. You can easily do 1,200, you can easily do even 2,000 yards with semi-automatic rifles these days without having shoulder problems, without losing speed, and without losing capability up close. So for me personally, I generally err, obviously, because you guys see my reviews, toward the semi-automatics or toward the lever action rifles. That being said, I understand the validity of bolt action rifles to other people, so we do still try to review them at least a couple of times a year, because I understand if you are in that hunting only application, that's where bolt action rifles really exist. If you are in that 1,000 yards to 5,000 yards application, that's where bolt guns really thrive. So overall, if that's you, by all means keep them, but for me, not really my thing. I hope this answered some of the questions that I get in the comments about bolt guns all the time, and if you have any more, put them in the comment section below. I got no problem making more videos. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. Please stop by our local homeless shelters, and remember to recycle. I'll check you later. I just prefer the levers because I sort of grew up with them. But if you want a little bigger option.
Thanks, Vanna.